this is a tradition that we have established a few years ago for the committee, the NGO Committee on the Status of Women Vienna, of which I am the secretary, to present to the Vienna NGO community the key issues that are going to be discussed at the forthcoming session of the Commission on the Status of Women that is going to take place in New York from the 9th to the 19th of March. Thank you very much for being here. We are 3 organizing partners, and I'm pleased to give the floor to Christiane Ugbor, who is the chair of the NGO Committee on the Status of Women Vienna. Christiane.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. We welcome you very much. We welcome Mrs. Anna Giudice from UNODC, Mr. Sami Nevala from head of the sector Statistics and Surveys, European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, Evelyn Duermayer from IADL, the International Association for Democratic Lawyers, and she's the member of the Austrian delegation in New York at the CSW70. And maybe if, I don't know, the ambassador, if she comes, Her Excellency María Alonso Giganto is also very much welcome. And
I'm here, yes. Hi, Christiane.
Thank you very much, thank you. So I think this is really a meeting point for all of us, because we are discussing the topic of this year, also of the CSW70, the access of women and girls to justice. And I think we should really discuss, we would hear from our speakers all the necessary information, but also can interact with them, we can ask questions, and we should have the feeling that it means all of us. Even we may have people in our midst who are not sure how they have access to justice. So it should give us really a motivation that we see how can we, in such a case, help or at least motivate the person to do it. And as it is said, the UNO has resolutions about it, they have standards, but there are still gaps. There are still so many barriers for women and girls to have access to justice. And that is, these things have to be removed. And it is not only for us to wait for somebody, it is even for us ourselves to do something to remove these barriers and to see. So I wish all of us a very, very interactive afternoon now. And when we then go home to our individual homes and lives, that we have some ideas how we can be also a stepstone to that we can help others to have access to justice. Thank you very much. And I give back to Anna. Yeah, thank you, Anna, that you are moderating and facilitating.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christiane. I know that Ian Tennant, the chair of the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, is also online, although he may be busy. So I know that the Alliance is pleased to be a co-organizer of this event. I don't know, Ian, if you want just to say hi.
Hello, everybody. I can't really see, I can see a slide, but I can't really see the people in the room. I assume there's a busy room of people in there, but very happy to be supporting the event on behalf of the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ian, for being here. And so we start our program with the first speaker that we are very pleased to welcome, Ambassador María Alonso Giganto, who is the Ambassador at Large for Feminist Foreign Policy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation of Spain. So, Ambassador, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the UNODC for convening us here today. And thank you, special thanks to the CSW NGO committee for, I see, thank you for also being part of the conversation. Thank you to special thanks to Anna Giudice for sending out the invitation. So, dear colleagues and friends, let me start by thanking all of you. And this exchange that we are having now comes at a very timely moment as we look ahead to the 70th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. It offers a valuable space for member states and civil society and the UN system to reflect together on what more we can do and how we can do it better. The priority theme this year is ensuring and strengthening access to justice for all women and girls, and resonates strongly here, especially in Vienna. It speaks directly to the mandate and daily work of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. However, and despite the progress, women and girls still encounter structural barriers within criminal justice systems. Limited access to legal aid, procedures that are not gender sensitive, and inequalities that undermine the full enjoyment of their rights. These are not just managerial issues. They go to the heart of justice systems' credibility and effectiveness. From a space perspective, gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls are not peripheral in the work of the UNODC. They are central to it. So integrating a gender perspective is not an add-on. It is strategic, it is a necessity. If we want policies on crime prevention, criminal justice, drug policy, and anti-corruption, and the fight against organized crime to be really effective, inclusive, and aligned with our shared commitments on human rights. So the rule of law and sustainable development must be also at the center of our work. Across the UNODC areas of work, the gender dimension is very clear. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by trafficking in persons and exploitation linked to illicit economies. At the same time, women serve as police officers, prosecutors, judges, and policymakers. Institutions become stronger, more trusted, and more legitimate. In drug policy, we know that criminalization, access to treatment, and reintegration measures affect women and men differently. If we ignore this reality, we design weaker policies. The same applies to corruption, which often hits women and vulnerable groups, hardest by limiting access to justice and essential public services. Access to justice for all is therefore not a separate conversation. It is a cross-cutting pillar that connects UNODC's mandates and justice systems that are accessible, inclusive, and gender responsive are also essential to prevent crime, protecting victims, and strengthening the rule of law. Civil society is indispensable in this effort. It helps us identify barriers, support victims directly, bring expertise, and reinforce accountability. Meaningful engagement between civil society, member states, and the Secretariat is crucial if we want our normative commitments to translate into real impact. As we move towards the CSW70, we should continue strengthening the bridge between the normative discussion in New York and the operational work in Vienna. Ensuring access to justice for women and girls is not only the right thing to do, it is fundamental to the effectiveness and credibility of UNODC's work. So let me finish by saying that we, Spain, we remain fully committed to this approach and to working closely with partners and civil society, including through the Group of Friends of Gender Equality that we now co-chair with Lebanon to keep gender equality firmly at the heart of the UNODC's mandate and action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for your encouraging words of support to these initiatives. And actually, we are very pleased of the partnership that we have established here at the Vienna International Center between the NGO committees and UNODC and the groups of friends on various matters. So we really look forward to advancing these important issues together in a harmonized fashion. So thank you really for this very important introduction. And to learn a lot about what is going to be discussed in New York, we have here Anna Giudice, who is the team leader for Accelerating Justice, Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice Section here at UNODC, and who has been, we used to work together many years ago.
Of course, thank you.
So we know, Rosemary, mute yourself, please. So we know how passionate and competent she is. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's always nice to have an Italian introducing me and knowing how to pronounce my name. It's not always the case. So thank you to the NGO committees and to the Alliance for this invitation and for the work you're doing, including in difficult times for gender equality. I have quite a long presentation, but I was told I can take up to 15 minutes, so I'll try to be not too detailed, but still try to cover a little bit about the UNODC mandates and our work on access to justice for women and girls and some upcoming opportunities and developments that we've seen in the last years. Next, I have the thing. Thank you. So yeah, tools, technical assistance, mandates, but also the barriers. Ambassador Giganto already mentioned some of them, and some of the upcoming opportunities to advance or at least continue the discussion on these topics. So UNODC, of course, has been working on crime prevention and criminal justice with the gender perspective and with attention to women and girls since many years. But I wanted to highlight the recent adoption of Resolution 78227 in December 2023 by the General Assembly on the recommendation of the Crime Commission on equal access to justice for all. And all of those words are important. We have, of course, the SDG already establishing the goals around access to justice, but also around gender equality and reduction of inequalities. But the resolution goes a little bit further on addressing really the aspects of discrimination and exclusion against women, girls, but also other groups that face discrimination for various reasons of their identity or their status. So the resolution requests member states to do a number of things, but it also requested UNODC to continue developing technical tools and training materials based on these standards and norms that we already have, and to provide technical assistance to member states. It also asked us to organize an expert group meeting, and it was quite a difficult negotiation. The final decision was that we would organize what was called a meeting of experts that nominated by member states. So it was in the middle of a normal expert group meeting and an intergovernmental expert group meeting. However, so the meeting was generously hosted by Brazil at the Ministry of Justice and Public Security in December 2024 and supported financially both by Canada and Brazil, which was also an important symbol that we were having this meeting in Latin America in the Global South, and with participation from over 30 countries, including experts, criminal justice practitioners, judges, and civil society, because some member states did nominate civil society. Because of the limited participation of civil society, we also had a panel where we had participation from more civil society organizations that briefed the experts. And before the meeting, we also had call for inputs, which reached member states, but also civil society, international organizations, and so on. So we were quite inclusive in implementing this mandate. The experts discussed all the aspects of equal access to justice for all and made a number of recommendations. I've put some of the key ones on the screen. I won't read them all, but some really advanced language around people-centered, equity-based, gender-responsive, and identity-inclusive criminal justice systems, and the need to eliminate structural and cultural barriers to access to justice, ensure fair and equal treatment, and so on. Another recommendation around inclusive and intersectional approaches to access to justice. So looking at the compounded vulnerabilities faced by individuals at the intersection of multiple identities and factors. So not just looking at large groups such as women or people with disability, but people that face barriers due to many different aspects of their identity or their vulnerabilities. And there was also a focus on something that also the ambassador mentioned today on the importance of diverse, equal, and equitable criminal justice institutions and police, victim support services, and so on, and specific guidance on how to ensure that. So it's not just enough to recruit, for instance, more women. You need to have career development processes, address workplace discrimination, participation, and so on. So a lot of, strong focus on that aspect as well. Another aspect that I think is important, in particular also for women who are victims of crime, was a focus on cross-sectoral, multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholder programs for access to justice and referral mechanisms between organizations to address the gaps in delivery of access to justice. We know that many people still fall between the institutions or have to see many different institutions instead of getting the support they need from the first moment. Also, of course, the focus on trauma-informed support services for victims, but also rehabilitation program for prisoners. It also requested UNODC to continue working in these topics, and there are a number of recommendations, but one focus in particular on making sure that we have the evidence-based approaches in addressing discrimination in access to justice, and with the particular focus to marginalized and discriminated populations. So we have been disseminating the report of this expert group meeting. It has been disseminated also by Canada and Brazil as the host to the regional meetings for the Crime Congress, and also presented in various fora. I think that they were also hoping that some of the language would make its way into the draft declaration for the Crime Congress, however, those negotiations are quite difficult. So there is resistance to the language on equal access to justice for all. So just to go back to our mandates, of course, most of you know what our general mandates are, but we derive our crime mandates from the Crime Congress initially and now from the Crime Commission since 1992. And the CND as well, of course, it focuses on drugs, but there are some aspects around access to justice. We'll actually have a side event on legal aid related to drug offenders at the next upcoming CND. And all of our work on criminal justice derives from the so-called UN standards and norms in crime prevention and criminal justice. And I've highlighted some of the most relevant ones. Of course, most of them have some reference to women or discrimination or groups in vulnerable situations, but then there's the numbers that are more specific. So I think, the three first ones are generic, but they do have reference to discrimination. The specific circumstances of women are mentioned, for instance, in the Tokyo rules on non-custodial measures. And then we have the more specific ones, in particular, the Bangkok rules on the treatment of women prisoners and non-custodial measures for women offenders, as well as the specific standards on the elimination of violence against women. So those were updated in 2010. The standards on access to legal aid and criminal justice are generic, but they have very detailed guidance on women and other groups that are called in that with special needs or rights. And of course, they also have very specific guidance on children and on a gender perspective in legal aid. The other general standards that refer to women, the Nelson Mandela rules, the new updated Kyoto model strategies as well. And then when it comes to girls, of course, girls fall within two frameworks. Often they're included in standards around violence against women and girls. However, under international law, they do have a specific status and rights. So there's a number of standards for children that, of course, apply to all girls under 18. So the standards on juvenile justice, on the juveniles deprived of their liberty, for instance, that also have quite a lot of reference to girls. In addition, the standards I mentioned previously also have reference to girls. So whether they're global, but then have specific reference to girls in the Bangkok rules and the legal aid principles and guidelines as well as the specific standards that we have on elimination of violence against children and the guidelines on child victims. So the standards are there. Of course, they're evolving from one standard to the next, most of the time in a positive way, not always, but that's another discussion. But yeah, we have quite a lot of good practices included in many of these. Now, how do we implement them? So what UNODC does is to provide what we call technical assistance, legislative and policy support, where we support countries when they want to revise their legislation or when they are adopting new legislation. We provide support in changing, in training and reforming the institutions, providing direct training, but also working with training institutions in countries, as well as at the strategic level, supporting countries to improve their criminal justice systems and their national strategies. And as an example, we've seen at least 2 countries as a result of this resolution and the expert group meeting develop their own national strategies on access to justice, implementing the recommendations. So our mandates in broad terms on access to justice look into this aspect of addressing discrimination and promoting inclusion. We have a strong mandate on legal aid for all persons in contact with the law, which also goes into these different groups. We work on the modernization of police and other law enforcement. We have work around efficiency, accountability, and integrity of criminal justice institutions. There's a mandate and a request to expand the use of restorative justice approaches and to protect and support victims of crime. And within that, of course, specific work on victims of trafficking and other sections, on victims of terrorism, or in our section also, of course, victims of gender-based violence or child victims. So what are some of the barriers to access to justice for women? Globally, women and girls experience gender-specific pathways that may lead to criminality, including violence, coercion, poverty, discrimination, and involvement in informal or illegal economies for survival. Victims of gender-based violence are also face specific structural, legal, and institutional barriers to access to justice. And once in contact with the criminal justice system, there are many systemic barriers: limited access to legal aid, and also limited quality and specialization of legal aid, gender insensitive policing, when policing should be gender responsive or sensitive, discriminatory laws and sentencing, of course, in a number of countries where, in fact, because of those laws, women who are victims are themselves criminalized and put in prison for acts that should probably not be considered, are not considered crimes for other people than women. The overuse of pretrial detention and of course, inadequate conditions in general in detention for women and in pretrial and police detention in particular. And then, of course, girls face the compounding barriers due to their gender, age, and developmental stage. And I think adolescent girls in particular really face some specific types of bias and discrimination, whether they're in contact with the criminal justice system or the juvenile justice system as victims, witnesses, or accused or offenders. So how do we ensure access to justice for women in contact with the law? When it comes to victims, and in some cases also witnesses, obviously a strong focus has to go to access to gender responsive and trauma-informed justice and victim support services. Many victim support organizations and services are led by victim survivors or have been designed by victim survivors, and this is a really important aspect. It is clear that lived experience does have a huge impact on knowing how to design systems that are not creating a risk for secondary victimization or that are really adapted to the needs of victim survivors. Another aspect is addressing the needs of women in prison and making sure that gender responsive policies are in place, and also looking at alternatives for women. Some countries have adopted really advanced legislation around caretaking, around, specific alternatives, because women are often the main breadwinners for their families, and detaining a woman has an impact on a whole family or even bigger community. Addressing and developing rehabilitation and social reintegration programs for women that are adapted to their needs, as well as in this whole system, really having a meaningful engagement of individuals with lived experience. This is something that really makes a difference, and not as a tokenistic approach, but rather as a really clear approach where you have organizations led by women who have been in contact with the system, either as victim survivors or as people who have been in prison, for instance, that can really be part of the discussion at the policy level to develop responses that are adapted to their needs. So just a quick sort of overview of some of the tools that we've developed. There are quite a few on women's access to legal aid and justice, on policing, on police responses to violence against women, women and imprisonment, as well as on investigating sexual and gender-based violence. And we also have a number of e-learning tools, one that was developed under a project in West Africa on access to legal aid for women. And then I'm also highlight the one on investigative interviewing. This is on how to interview victims, witnesses, and offenders, but it does have quite a strong gender lens. It's not specific to women, though. And I wanted to highlight some projects. A recent one that we've been implementing with the World Bank is research on women's access to legal aid. The initial phase has looked at 9 countries, and through a methodology based also on our standards and on the methodology we've used in the past in our global study on legal aid. We've created researched in all these 9 countries, and some initial findings you can see here on the screen. So the blue means that this exists, and the pink that it doesn't exist. So across the 9 countries, most countries do not have any feedback mechanism of the legal aid system. So legal aid exists, but there's no way to measure its impact. All of the countries have some kind of ICT-based legal aid solution, but mandatory training is only in 3 out of 9. So there is legal aid, but it's not gender specific, or there's no gender specific training. And again, you see legal aid law codified in 6 out of 9, published budgets as well, but it's a mixed bag, let's say. We see that in general, legal aid systems are not yet at the level they should be. And when it comes to legal aid for women, of course, there's still a lot to do. And we're hoping to do a second sort of series of countries in the phase 2. Another project I wanted to quickly mention, which is a little bit old now, but was a project on access to legal aid for women in West Africa. It was implemented and it started implementation, and then COVID happened, so we had to change quite a lot of the activities. In the end, we ended up funding a number of CSOs providing legal aid for women, in particular women in prison, and a number of women were released thanks to the project because they should actually not have been in detention, but also it helped building a relationship of trust between the legal aid providers and the CSOs providing legal aid and the relevant state authorities. So there's some sustainable impact of this. As part of that project, we developed a number of training tools that are available in English and French. So those can be used for anyone who's working on legal aid for women. And just another recent example of an interesting initiative that we carried out in Kinshasa in the DRC in December. We delivered a training on investigative interviewing for specialized judicial police. So they are specialized to investigate sexual and gender-based violence. As you know, it's a huge epidemic in the DRC. And we trained, I think about 20 judicial police officers on how to interview victims and also how to treat child victims and witnesses. So just upcoming now for your information, we will have together with the team of experts on conflict-related sexual violence, the high-level launch of the global network and community of practice of prosecutors and practitioners pursuing criminal accountability for conflict-related sexual violence. That will be on the 9th of March at UN headquarters. And we are finalizing a UNODC side event on similar topics as today. So advancing access to justice for women and girls in contact with the criminal justice system, which will probably be on the 17th or 18th of March, so the second week. And finally, we're in the planning and organization of the Crime Congress at the end of April in UAE, in Abu Dhabi. And there will be a number of both agenda items, workshops, but also side events with access to justice and gender lens. Thank you. I think, those are the agenda items and workshops. So agenda item 1 and 2 and workshops 1 and 2 are particularly relevant to the topic of today, as well as probably the workshop 4, which is about technology. And of course, technology facilitated gender-based violence is a huge priority and issue right now when it comes especially to women. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna, for this very broad introduction. I think that this is very helpful for many of us also to clarify the issues of connection. So the concept of women in contact with the criminal justice system, be that as victims, as perpetrators, and the issues that are relevant for both sides of the problem. And thank you also for informing us precisely about the events during the CSW. Do you know if these events are going to be in person only or hybrid?
And well, the second one, we're trying to make it hybrid. The first one, I'm not sure, but I can check too.
Thank you, because I'm sure that many of us would be interested in joining remotely. And thank you also for mentioning the Abu Dhabi follow-up, because that is going to be another question that we will have for you. So you mentioned something that I turned towards my next speaker here, and I noticed that gender disaggregated statistics on surveys were almost unavailable. The importance of data is never stressed enough. And we are really happy to have here Sami Nevala, who is the head of statistics and survey at the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights. And Sami will tell us something very important about a broad survey that is carried out across Europe already for many years, exploring the needs and experiences of women. So he will tell us more about this. Sami.
No, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here today, and also maybe to clarify in the beginning, I'm here to speak as in my role as working in the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights. I'm not representing the EU, whole of the EU. That's I think in the UN context, the task for the EU's External Action Service. But something I will be talking about is the survey that FRA has been involved in conducting in the EU on gender-based violence against women. And the reason in particularly to bring it up here today is because then the surveys are one tool to address this data gap and to have a better understanding of also the barriers that women have in accessing justice after experiencing crime. Where should I point this? Okay. The next one. But before I kind of talk about the survey, I'll just I thought I would just mention some of the recommendations that the European Parliament has very recently issued to the Council of the EU concerning the priorities for the EU for the CSW. And I think this is quite an extensive document, and I really encourage you to have a look at it. And I've included the link here. I think it can be shared. But just in terms of framing the issue, the European Parliament stresses that the access to justice is widely recognized as a fundamental human right and a cornerstone for rule of law and democracy. In the EU in particular, it's recognized under the Article 47 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU, which is a key reference document for the work of the Fundamental Rights Agency. And in terms of outlining what is meant by access to justice, or what is needed for access to justice and effective access to justice, the Parliament also highlights the need for reliable data to have a good understanding of the situation and where things are moving. In addition to other measures that are needed. In the same document, and also in response to some of the barriers that we already heard in the previous presentation concerning access to justice, the Parliament highlights the need for measures such as gender-responsive legal frameworks, access to legal aid, specialized courts and services, training for professionals, and other issues that are very, I think, well aligned with what we heard previously in terms of the work already carried out by the UNODC in this area. So why was the EU survey on gender-based violence conducted? It was conducted to estimate the prevalence of gender-based violence in the EU, meaning how many women in the EU experience gender-based violence, and what are the consequences. The need for regular data collection is highlighted, for example, in the Istanbul Convention that most EU member states are party to, and also the EU has joined as an entity, the Istanbul Convention. The recent EU directive on combating violence against women and domestic violence highlights the need for data collection, both in terms of surveys, but also administrative statistics. And so, for example, the statistics that were just referenced in terms of use of services, but also reporting to the police. And finally, the European Commission's proposal for the revision of the current Victims' Rights Directive also includes some measures to improve the data collection. But in the survey, the gender-based violence survey is quite an extensive survey. The plan is now to carry it out in the EU every 5 years, including in covering all EU member states. Currently, the survey is carried out on a voluntary basis, but hopefully in the future it will be something that all member states carry out as an obligation. But the survey, first of all, to estimate the prevalence of violence, we need to know who are the victims, what type of violence they have experienced, and also then to analyze the results in a more detailed manner, in a disaggregated manner, to look at the experiences of physical violence, sexual violence, psychological violence, also economic violence, as well as then sexual harassment and experiences in childhood, which can have an impact on women's experiences in adulthood. And in the survey, there was also a section on stalking. But then again, going back to access to justice, or if we then want to look specifically experiences of women, but also then gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, domestic violence, we need to know about the perpetrators. So the survey collected information about the type of perpetrators, also where the incidents took place, whether they took place in the home or they took place in a public place, because we know that also from previous research, that's one of the key differences in the violence experienced by men versus women, that in many cases, women experience violence at home, and which of course puts them in a very different position compared with men, who predominantly experience violence in the public places, where there can be people who intervene, there can be people who give evidence, there can be people who give advice and support to the victims. But when the violence takes place at home, then these are often not available to women. And then finally, once we have asked in the survey about the type of violence experienced, the types of perpetrators, we can ask women who have experienced violence about whether they reported it to the police, whether they have contacted other services, be it healthcare services, social services, legal services, victim support services. And we can also ask about the impact and consequences of violence. And part of most surveys is a set of questions also on the socio-demographic characteristics, because this allows us then to disaggregate the results for specific groups of women based on data like education, disability, and age. In this wave of this was the first wave of the EU survey on gender-based violence. The next wave is currently planned for data collection in 2027, 2028. And but in this first wave that we had in the EU, 18 countries that where the national statistical authorities conducted the survey data collection. Italy conducted a separate data collection based on their national surveys. And in 8 countries, the Fundamental Rights Agency and the European Institute for Gender Equality, another EU agency, jointly collected the data. And but our data collection was based on the same methodology, same questionnaire. So therefore, the results are comparable, and we can calculate indicators for the 27 EU member states and the total. In my presentation, I don't have so many survey results because the first results of the survey were published in November 2024, but these focused on the prevalence of the violence. And now in a couple of weeks' time, on the 3rd of March, we will publish a more comprehensive report on the analyzing the results of the survey in the EU 27. But in the first report, there were already some results related to women's access to justice and use of criminal justice system. And what the results tell us is that for a lot of the violence, gender-based violence, remains invisible to the authorities. It doesn't remain totally invisible. We see from the survey that most women have talked to someone, maybe their friend, their relative, their acquaintance, about the violence they have experienced. But 13% of 14% of women said that they have reported experience of violence to the police. More frequently, women said in the survey that they, as a result of experiencing violence, they contacted health or social services, which really stresses the importance of having a comprehensive approach to the intervention, and to also considering that in many cases these services can refer victims to each other, to other services. For example, 6.4% of women said that they contacted a support service, and when we know that in many cases the support services encourage or provide the confidence for women to then turn to the police with their experiences. So it's really important to think about all the different services that women can contact as a result of experiencing violence, and what are the opportunities at each of them to then providing women information about their rights. And but the fact that 2 in 3 victims talk to informally about their experiences also then stresses the responsibility of the whole society and all of us to when we encounter victims of violence. But this being said, if in the survey there were still some 1 in 3 women who had experienced violence but who had not shared their experience with anyone before the survey interview. So so there is still a large number of victims who do not get access to have not access to information on their rights. The survey also showed some variation in terms of the awareness of different support services across the EU member states, and some. But overall, the average awareness is quite high. So we see that 3 in 4 victims and non-victims are aware of existence of different support services in their country. But they might not be confident in terms of thinking that they will get the help that they need from these services. So I already said that a more comprehensive analysis of the survey results, including on women's access to different services as victims of violence, will be published on the 3rd of March. We are also making the survey data available. Some of it is already available through Eurostat, that is the statistical office of the EU, and so that then further analysis can be conducted based on the results. In those 18 countries where the national statistical authorities conducted the survey, there are also national reports available on the survey results. Finally, then stepping outside the EU GPV survey, I wanted to also mention another survey that the Fundamental Rights Agency has recently conducted, and also because the results of this survey will be published next week. This is the survey on violence and human rights abuses against women displaced by the war in Ukraine. Given the mandate of the Fundamental Rights Agency, we can carry out data collection in the EU, but not outside the EU. Therefore, we conducted interviews in 3 countries in the EU, Czechia, Germany, and Poland, interviewing women who had arrived to these countries since the start of the current war in Ukraine. And in terms of the content of the survey, it was very similar on one hand with the EU GPV survey. So women were asked about their experiences of physical and sexual violence, psychological violence, and sexual harassment, and then whether they turned to different services as a result of these experiences. Of course, the added complication for women from Ukraine is that they may have experienced violence in Ukraine during the transit and then in the EU. Having arrived in the EU, maybe for the first time, they might not be aware of really where to turn to, what services are available, and also then if they have experienced violence in Ukraine but are now in the EU, how can they then report these experiences? So these are some of the issues that we explore in the report, as well as women's encounters with potentially exploitative offers. For example, when women have been offered housing or transportation or employment, and whether they have felt that they have encountered offers that were exploitative in nature, including some offers that could involve attempted human trafficking. So I really look forward to then in next week and then week after sharing information about the both reports as they are published. And yes, I would be very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sami. Thank you. I think that we are all aware of the methodological challenges that you may be facing with the, let's say, the normal survey, but with this one in particular, because it adds several layers. And so congratulations on your work. And thank you for adding some numbers to what we are discussing. I think that it is important also to bear in mind that we are also collectively working towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and the framework of indicators is particularly challenging as regards women and girls. So the more we advance with this type of data collection methodologies and knowledge of systems, I found it very good news that now national surveys are supporting and compatible with the European survey. So the more, the better. Thank you very much. We move now to our last speaker, who is Evelyn Duermayer, well known to all of us, from the International Association of Democratic Lawyers and former chairs of the Committee on the Status of Women, who is going to be a member of the Austrian delegation to the CSW70. So she's really going to New York, and we look forward to hearing from her. Evelyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, good morning, whoever is watching online. I have two hats. I have the head of my organization and the head of being a member of the Austrian delegation. But I would like to mention before, as we have many information from UNODC about the situation of women in prison. I was yesterday in the Schauspielhaus Wien, and I saw a very interesting monologue called Take Care and Stay Safe. It's about a correspondence between an actor from Berlin, Markus, who is corresponding since years with a woman who is sentenced to life prison in the US. And she has been transferred from Minnesota with different steps and is now in Alabama. And this is really very sensitive to see a woman who will never be able to get out of a prison. So I think this is also a point in our discussion, how to work with women in prison. What possibilities do they have in prison, for instance? Regarding to my two hats, I don't know which one to start. So let me start with CSW70. I see one other member in the room who is also Elisabeth, who is also part of the delegation, and Angelika, who was with us last year, right? Angelika, in the delegation. Yes, and how to get to be part of the delegation. For the first time, I was asked to be part of the delegation. I was rather surprised and joined. And now I usually apply through my association, and my president writes a message to the organizing, so to speak, committee in the ministries. And yes, this year the delegation is very large. We are 13 members, and it's very intergenerational, from, say, elderly ladies to young students who participate in this delegation. The delegation is headed by the Minister of Justice, who is Anna Spora, and there are a few members of her her ministry, her experts who are joining the delegation. One is a judge, Anja Oberkofler. Katharina Derfler is a judge. And we have also, of course, a member from the foreign ministry who is responsible for organizing, for communication between the members of the delegation. And we have also Jacqueline Niavarani, who most of you know, who is part from the Ministry of Women, Science, and yeah. And we have also members of the parliament who are coming to New York. We are a member from Soroptimist, from Servas, from WAVE, for International Alliance of Women. There are young women there. And from the Bundesjugendvertretung, and from WILP, from White, a UN representative of the Austrian Commission for UNESCO. And what is intended so far is to have a meeting online. Maybe I just talked to Jacqueline Niavarani before we leave for New York, because usually not all of our members are staying there for the whole 2 weeks. Some stay only for the beginning, for the first week, like myself, and others coming for the second week. So it's a good idea to have this meeting before we leave for New York. We'll have a meeting, of course, in the representation of from Austria in New York. And we will have, of course, regular meetings among the delegation members. There's a delegation lounge where we usually have the possibility to meet. And yes, and besides, each of us has the possibility to join the meetings they are interested in. It depends if it's a side event inside the UN headquarters or when we go to other locations from NGOs, from civil society, like Salvation Army. Opposite the headquarters are the church center. So we have a large spectrum of getting to know how this in a restricted form works this time, because more than 75 countries are not coming to New York because they don't get a visa. And also we report afterwards, what have we experienced, what we have known now. And I think this is not also important for us who are part of the delegation, but how we afterwards inform the UN and the committees here in Vienna, for instance, and for those who are from other parts, to their respective organizations or countries. What I found out that the first week, I just studied the first week, that there are 2 events from Austria taking place. It's together with Uganda, Spain, and UNIDO. It's about women, youth, and at the Center of Sustainable and Inclusive Coffee Evaluation chain with a focus on Africa. It's in the Uganda House. This is the first event on the 11th of March. And then is ADA. We know it's an organization with development agency, and together with global networkers of women peace builders, they have an event on the 12th of March, Women Peace Builders in Humanitarian Action, Transitional Justice, and Community Resilience. So this covers also all the topic we have heard from the experts here on the podium. The second week is more concentrated on discussing and deciding the agreed conclusion, where there exists already a 0 draft. I don't want to go into details. I suppose you have all received this 0 draft, and there are many topics that we have already heard here in our afternoon meeting. And yes, For the other events outside the UN, for instance, my organization will have an online event on the 18th of March. It's my organization, and we have a regional chapter in Latin America and the Caribbean, the American Association of Justice, and they have, it's more tradition as well, on feminist justice, how they call it. Unfortunately, I cannot give you many details because they are still waiting for confirmation from their speakers. But what I can mention to you is the first speaker, who is Nelly Minierski. She is from Argentina. She comes originally from Moldova. And she is 97 years old, and she makes the introduction to this event. And she is known in Argentina and partly worldwide as the Green Queen, because she was the one who was one of the initiator of fighting against violence, femicide, and especially for legalization and decriminalization of abortion. And she is still fighting for this. She used to teach at the university. She was president of the first woman president of the Association of the Lawyers in Buenos Aires. So I think this is always very impressive to see her only online, but I intend to go to Buenos Aires after New York, so I'm looking very much forward to meet her. Yeah, this is my organization in the second week, and yeah, my organization has an online journal, as some of you know, and we usually try to publish on the 8th of March. For instance, last year we published a text on Berta von Suttner, as you know, the first woman who got the Nobel Prize of Peace. And this year we concentrate on the situation of women in Afghanistan. And we have the support of Rashida Mansour, who was one of the special rapporteurs on violence against women and girls. This is what I can tell you about my activities and what is going to be starting on the 9th of March from our Austrian delegation and what my association is doing. I'm happy to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Evelyn, for giving us a really first-hand experience of what you expect as a member of the delegation. I think we have to give credit to many countries who are hosting civil society representatives, and that is really helping the civil society participation, because at least you have the feeling that when you come back, something can be done and continue more than participating on your own. I really wish to thank and congratulate all the speakers for sticking to the time. This means that we have ample time now for discussion. So I would like to open the floor for questions for all the speakers. So you may wish to introduce yourself and say if you are directing the question to a particular speaker. And after some 20 minutes, I would like to go back to all the speakers for a second round, a short round of responses and conclusion. So the floor is open in the room and online. Online, please, what should they do? Tobias, should they raise their hand? What should they? Yes, maybe if you, or if you want to write questions in the chat. Actually, there is already one question. Maybe to break the ice, I can repeat the question that is already in the chat. And the question is there a survey from Sudan? I don't know if the EU Fundamental Rights Agency knows. No. Anyone who knows? I know that there are, for countries in conflict, normally there are other measurement, so like the Population Fund and other agencies of the UN that work on this. I don't know if you want to mention.
I mean, just to mention, of course, the population-based surveys may be difficult in a conflict situation, but there are a number of UN mandates. The team of experts that I mentioned that works on conflict-related sexual violence does keep track of the situation. But of course, yeah, it's a different methodology than when you have peace and institutions that can carry out population-based surveys. But for sure, I think all the anecdotal evidence, what I've read is that there's a massive issue of sexual and gender-based violence in Sudan against women, but also against men and boys.
Thank you very much. There is a question online. Let's collect 2 or 3 questions. Okay, so first question online, Rosemary Barberet. Rosemary.
Good morning and apologies for speaking out of turn at the beginning. This is a wonderful session. I've attended the CSW for many years, and I'll have 5 panels along with Dawn Biegner-Thomas running at the NGO CSW Forum, which are panels that will be both virtual and online, and I'll send information to the Alliance. I just wanted to make a special plea for anyone attending from Vienna and particularly from UNODC to stress the issue of access to justice for women and girls that have been accused of crimes. Because there is an imbalance in New York, and although I don't think anybody should choose between the 2 issues, there's quite a tendency to pay a lot more attention to victims of crime when they're women or girls than when they are accused of crime, because it's much more palatable, of course, to think of women and girls as victims and perhaps having violated the law. And so we often see at the CSW that the issues related to access to justice for those women and girls that have been accused of crime is sort of not being discussed, or only in NGO events, and not making their way to the agreed conclusions or any kind of outcome document. So this to me is the important contribution of the work that's being done in Vienna. And I really think it's important to rectify this balance so that when we approach the issue of criminal justice and gender equality, we're not only speaking about crime victims, which of course are very numerous and very important, but also the issues related to women and girls who have been detained, who have been accused of crimes, who are convicted and incarcerated, as often their relatively small numbers mean that their interests and rights are left to the wayside. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. This is a very good point to make. And I think that the concept of women in contact with criminal justice system is important to be stressed. So questions in the room. I see that you are ready to speak. Don't hesitate, please. Who wants to break the ice here in the room? Christiane.
Thank you very much. I have a question to Mr. Sami Nevala. You mentioned that across the union, the gender-based violence is mostly invisible to authorities. Now, my question is, why is this so? On one side, we have femicide. We have so many things, even where the police is involved, the diverse authorities. And then on the other side, does it mean also that the part is the media? The media only brings in the femicide and not what is really going on with gender-based violence? So did you find out why it is like that? That is my question.
Thank you for the question. I think there are some results from our survey, and also like the Fundamental Rights Agency carried out an EU-wide survey on violence against women already in 2012. So, and based on both, we see that there are differences then in terms of sexual violence and physical violence, especially for sexual violence. What comes very strongly through in the respondents' answers is the feeling of shame, of feeling of embarrassment, not wanting to involve other people in the situation. So these are really holding people back from contacting the authorities. The same can be case for physical violence, especially when it happens in the home, be it by the intimate partner, or the other domestic perpetrators. But then the other issues that act as barriers are not being confident that the police could be able to do something, or that they would be, like for many victims, the first and foremost thing they want after experiencing violence, especially intimate partner violence, is to be safe. And then it's not always so easy for police to guarantee that safety, so that's the big challenge. And but also there are victims who are concerned that if they go to the police, they would not be they would not be treated well, or in a gender sensitive way, and which then kind of points to the need for further training of professionals, as well as then specialized units within the police services. So those are just some examples of the barriers.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Linda McDonald online. So, Linda.
Thank you, Anna. I'm a proud member of the Alliance of NGOs and Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, and I'm from Canada. And I've been watching very closely I'm also on the working group on non-state torture of women and girls with the Alliance. And I've been watching very closely the Epstein files, because I'm Canadian. I'm closer to the U.S. I don't know. I think the European news is getting it. I've been seeing that. And I don't know if you're aware of the UN expert statement on the Epstein files, called them the flawed files, and recognizing that there's human trafficking, of course, but also torture, enforced disappearances, and that it may amount to crimes against humanity. And the human traffickers are non-state actors perpetrating non-state torture and human trafficking. So my question is, what is your opinion on thinking of these global informal networks of human trafficking when they amount to such atrocities as crimes against humanity for women? Thank you, women and girls.
Thank you. Do you want to ask the question to anyone in particular, or if it is for everyone, then we collect a few more questions before?
Just for anyone that wants to answer. I don't have it directed at anyone in particular. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Linda. Evelyn wants to respond.
My question is to Anna and to Sami. You have a picture where you have an elderly woman on one side. So my question is the implication or the role of elderly women in your research. It hasn't been mentioned, if I'm listened well, but it's on your picture when you first started your intervention. So this is my question.
We have a question for everyone, a question for Sami. Yes, okay, and a question for Anna as well. Okay, so how do we proceed? Okay. Anna?
Thank you, Rosemary, and also thank you for inviting us to speak at one of your events. They look really amazing. Unfortunately, at this point in time, as far as I know, no one is traveling from UNODC to CSW because of the current financial situation. We do have an office there, and they will be representing us as well as they can, and we will do these events with online participation from our side. We fully agree with you, and this is also why we have been contributing to the process of this CSW. We were part of the expert meeting as observers. We provided a paper. Actually, I should have mentioned it also, but a lot of the substance from the presentation is from the Observer paper that we provided, which focused very much on women in prison and women in conflict with the law. And we would also really maybe call on the Austrian delegation and the Spanish delegation we've already been in contact with, in making sure that indeed the agreed conclusion do reflect this topic. From what we saw from the initial draft, it was extremely weak, to be honest. Also showing that, you know, the drafters are not experts in justice. So it's very generic sort of statements on access to justice. But yeah, we are happy to provide inputs also to the Austrian delegations. And yeah, it is a divide that we have between different UN entities, and it's a difficult one. But I also wanted to highlight, yes, I think it was yesterday actually, a strong statement by a group of UN experts led by Alice Edwards, the Special Rapporteur on Torture, Margaret Satterthwaite, the Special Rapporteur on the Independence of Judges and Lawyers, focusing on this fact that the CSW should look into the protection of women in prisons and curbing over-criminalization of women. So I think that's also something that can be used in sort of both civil society and member states, trying to make sure that the knowledge and the expertise and the processes that exist here and also in Geneva are reflected in the conversations and hopefully in the agreed conclusions, which I think will be extremely difficult to agree on at this point in time. I don't, for sure, elderly women and violence against older persons in general is an increased sort of focus area, and there should be definitely more done on that, especially in sort of our countries where the population is aging, but also in other countries. I don't have much specific to say here, but I wanted to also ask Sami, maybe on that question of age, both elderly or older persons, but also have you seen or do you have data already on the sort of increase amongst young people? Because what I see anecdotally is gender-based and domestic violence, intimate partner violence with very young people already happening in their first relationship. And, you know, the impact of certain influencers and so on online that lead to this sort of relationship violence that I find really worrying. I wonder if you already have data around that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sami, to address both.
Yeah, I think very good questions. The in the EU survey, the respondents' ages were from 18 to 74, meaning that we don't have the youngest and we don't have the oldest. In the survey itself, women were asked about, for example, intimate partner violence without any age limit. So whatever took place during their relationship, whenever the relationship started. So we have some information on that, but because the survey did not specifically sample or oversample younger people, it's then more difficult to analyze their experiences, and that's why separate data collection tools are needed. For older women, there's some this is something that is much discussed in the survey space, and I think some countries also implemented the survey without age limits, and that was also the case for the FRAS earlier survey. But again, it's from the surveys, it's more difficult to focus on specific age groups because of the sample size limitations. But there is, for example, in Eurostat and among the member states of the EU, there's currently pilot projects going ahead to have, for example, better coverage of people living in institutions, for example, which then, with advanced age, there are more and more people from the age group that also live in different groups, homes, institutions, homes for the elderly, which can be challenging for survey data collection. So we have So data that we have is limited, but hopefully we can improve on that in the future.
Okay, we have a question. Sorry, we have a question in the room, and then we go back to the speakers. Ele Cocotte.
Okay. I'm Ele Cocotte from Sonta International. I'm listening to all your deep thoughts and knowledges about our topics, but I didn't hear any idea or answer maybe to what are your expectings if you go to New York. What do you expect? What may be the results what we have? Because I think, of course, we can learn again what is going on in all the states which we know about. But what can we do during this time, during these 2 weeks? How can you, have you any idea how, is there any measure to bring those topics together, to go more passes on, that you can really get some results?
Are you talking to me or?
Because we were checking if Ambassador Giganto is still online. I don't know, Ambassador Giganto is still online? No, unfortunately not. Yeah, because actually it would have been good to hear from the ambassador. Sorry. I think that this is a very good point, and actually we would like to get back at the end to the speakers. We have already heard something very discouraging, so that UNODC is not even going there. So you can imagine how supportive the context is at the moment about this situation. We still have the question from Linda McDonald pending, so I don't know if the panelists, anyone wants to, maybe Linda, you wish to repeat your question in a succinct way, Linda?
I'm wondering if any of the panelists wanted to comment on human trafficking and non-state torture and enforced disappearances and all of the different crimes that are noted in the Epstein files, if they have the opinion that, as the UN experts do, that they can amount to crimes against humanity for women and girls.
Okay, thank you. It's quite big, and if I may say how it resonates to me. Anyway, maybe I can just explain that the Alliance of NGOs already for several years has a working group that is led by Ugbor here in the room. We have been looking at the issue of gender-based violence as a form of non-state torture. And clearly, these issues have a connection to the bigger issue of trafficking in persons and trying to promote the inclusion of non-state torture in the provisions of the UN Convention Against Torture at large. And these are very, very sensitive issues that we have tried to formulate in a professional way through a series of research briefs and documents that we have submitted as conference room papers to several UN meetings. And in this context, I think that what is happening now and what we read in the news may add a little to the discussion. So I don't know, because I hear Anna nodding, so maybe you can add something.
Yeah, thanks. I was consulting with my colleague as well, who mentioned that the crimes against humanity definition in the international humanitarian law requires a generalized attack on the civilian population. So probably in the current state of international law, that wouldn't that, work. For sure. I mean, trafficking seems to be quite clear in what we read. And again, we are not the courts or the judges to look at this kind of cases. I wanted to mention also that I find it interesting to go back to the UN Declaration on Victims of Crime and Abuse of Power, which was an interesting approach taken in 1985 when that declaration was adopted, to look at, victims of crime, but also victims of abuse of power. And the link to corruption here is clear, right? In many cases, we see that as sort of one of the structural barriers as well to accessing justice. If the criminal justice system or the police is corrupt, women and people in vulnerable situations will have even less access to justice, and me even at risk by being in contact with certain institutions. And I wanted to mention also something that could be of interest to the proper lawyers amongst us, that we will be launching this as part of something called Sherlock, which is a UNODC database of case law that looks at different types of organized crime. We will have, or we will launch the part that looks into cases about conflict-related sexual violence and related SGBV crimes. So looking at actual case law from different countries that could be of interest also for this discussion. Thanks.
No, thank you, because this is very important. You see that Anna has a team supporting, and so maybe we can get back to you when we discuss certain issues. I think this is the last call for questions, because I would like to give the floor then to all the speakers for some concluding remarks. So anyone else? Where is Elizabeth? Sorry, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Thank you. Just wanted to say something with regard to the question, what to do in New York. Of course, we can make advocacy, and particularly, well, our organization is all about educating women and girls, and there should be a lot more invested in education for women and girls, because it makes them less prone to violence. It empowers them, and until finally achieving equity in the law professions and in all areas. So education for women and girls, extremely important, and this is what we are doing. Yeah, thank you. Should be doing, will be doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think it's really important to have some, at least somewhere to start from, so that you have a stream of ideas to follow. I think we had a lot of inputs also in addition to what we heard from the speakers. I think that on the basis of these additional inputs, maybe the speakers now want to use 1 minute to say something. So maybe we can start from Evelyn. We go this way. Evelyn, please.
What to expect from New York? CSW70, I think it's not an answer that would be easy. I think one of the most important moments to have so many women from all over the world with different perspective, different work, so we can share something and we can have experience from other organizations how we could deal, and maybe also try to have a final agreed conclusion that are really sort of satisfying, so to speak, our expectation. But this is not an easy work. But nevertheless, you take some knowledge with you back to your country. You could use it here in Vienna, I would say. And I think all the topics we have here heard, and these are topics that don't end today and don't end at the CSW70. Access to justice. We haven't spoken about labor. This is also a place where we need more justice for women. So I think this is a topic that will be with us for quite some time.
Sami.
Well, I would like to thank you again for inviting me here today to present some results, but because our report is still being prepared, what I could present today was quite limited. So I really look forward to sharing in the coming weeks the links with you once the reports have been published, and hopefully then we can see if there are other opportunities to discuss these results in more detail. Thank you.
Looking forward. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. I think for me, I think we are at the moment of trying to, how can I say, resist the backlash and resist the going backwards on all the commitments that have been, advanced thanks to the work of activists and women and others during the last 30, 40, 50 years. So therefore, I do expect very strong activism and advocacy in New York by those who can be there. And these events that are being organized by different CSOs are really great. I think it's important to occupy that space and to also, advocate with the countries that are supportive and that are standing the ground of resisting the backlash. And also, I think these kind of events are also empowering for those who participate to see that you're not alone in moments that are difficult, and to give the message to women and girls around the world who cannot be there that there are others that are speaking up on their behalf or listening to them and bringing their lived experience to the forefront. And yeah, I'm still shocked by the numbers, to be honest, again, from the EU, that despite the fact that everyone knows where to go, but we don't go there because we don't trust the system. I'm speaking as a woman, as a mother, as a survivor myself. And this is a problem, and that is on each person, the responsibility to change the system, to start speaking, not to be ashamed. As my daughter said, we shouldn't be ashamed. The perpetrators should be ashamed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Christiane.
Thank you. Yeah, what came into me also now is, what can we now as grassroots do? What could happen? So I would say, for instance, Anna, we would be grateful, these grassroots really on the floor that have to do much with people, to have these tools, toolkits, maybe seminars, how to do. And also what we would be grateful is the survey, maybe also with some, maybe we can make some events where this survey is really introduced, and what can we make out of it? And I think for New York, I would see it is a big chance, the network. So many organizations are together, so many women, NGOs and stakeholders. And I think many brains bring also a lot together, so that one can really have I would say, not a strategy of only today, also for tomorrow going on, because I think there's so much to be done. And I think that is what we here see in the small places is also in the big places. And I think we have really chances to do it. And we would be very grateful if all these institutions can help. Send also to the grassroots on the floor, because they are the ones who have to do with these women. They are the ones that have to do with these girls. And how do we do it best? Also to the police officers and the judges that interrogate the women and the girls. And when you said of shaming and blaming, yes, so maybe they have to be trained how to behave in these situations. And that could could help a lot of women and girls also to be more open and not to have too much fears. Maybe there should be some measurements of how to guide them and protect them. So, but I think New York is a big chance. And I wish really that it is used. And we here, we too, we have a big chance. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all the speakers. I will just make a couple of comments on my own. I think that this meeting is a very important opportunity because most of us are not going to be in New York, unfortunately. And we know, some of us who have been there, we know the confusion, we know the stress of being unable to follow everything that is going on. So we really would like to delegate to those who go, please follow this, follow that. And one thing that we can think about being here in Vienna is of this meeting as a step in a path, in a direction of follow-up, so possibly to get together again to hear what happened, you know? So to hear from those who were there, to let us know how it went and how they were able to interact with others, to network, etc. Another thing that we heard is a sort of a desire to hear more about the EU survey when it's going to be published. So you said that you want to tell us, so please come. So we can organize something to hear more about the results of this survey. We also heard about Abu Dhabi, the Crime Congress from 25th to the 30th of April. When we were preparing for this meeting, I asked Anna, so how are you going to report from the CSW to Abu Dhabi? Now I know that you are not going to. Maybe things will change. Let's hope. And then, can we invite you in some space to connect the CSW70 to the Crime Congress in Abu Dhabi? In Abu Dhabi, there is going to be, it's a sort of experimental space that is called the NGO Lab. So we have been told that there will be a room with the capacity of 80 persons where NGOs can organize meetings. And the idea would be to have meetings on important issues. And so women would be one, older persons could be another, you know. So this could be an idea, you know, to have this type of follow-up and try to make use also of this space at the Congress. Also taking into account, and I keep repeating it, that the Congress is one of the UN meetings where civil society has really the largest space and opportunity to say things. We have just learned that there are 250 ancillary meetings organized. That makes a bit of a competition for meetings, but it's going to be very interesting, really quite enjoyable. So in this context, I think we have to thank all the speakers, thank all the participants, and many participants were online. Thank you very much. May I ask the two presenters if we can share the presentations with the participants? Thank you very much. So we are going to make them available to all those who were here. With this, many thanks and see you next time. Nice evening. Bye.